Hello, Savannah. Hello, Savannah. Welcome to another edition of Kandily Kesha. It's really good to be back with you again tonight as we do another recap of the National League of Cities conference, the congressional conference. We had a handful of days in Washington, D.C., representing the great city of Savannah. And it's always nice to attend this conference in that it gives us the opportunity to recharge as well as learn of best practices. In addition, we get the opportunity to rub shoulders with council members across the United States of America and talk about those things we have in common, talk about those things that we are struggling with, our accomplishments, the things that we are most proud of, and some of the differences. And most glaring for me, oftentimes, is to see how so many cities are many instances where there's evidence that they all are of the same party affiliation. They all represent various socioeconomic backgrounds as well as race. And the majority of the individuals we connected with this year, basically, it was refreshing to see so many of them really getting things done for their entire city. And so that's the greatest hope that I have for here in Savannah is that not just one group will be served or one demographic in our community will be served, but that all Savannah is represented. And so as we delve in today, I asked two of my colleagues to join me to talk about what their experience was. I had an opportunity to attend a number of sessions. It's exhausting. The sessions are jam-packed, starting at 8:30 in the morning all the way through 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And you have the opportunity to sort of cherry pick and register for the sessions before arriving at the conference. But once there, there's so much you can just, so many times where you can just pop in and out. This year, we were fortunate to hear from our president of the United States, Joe Biden, as well as Nancy Pelosi, Buttigieg. I always struggle with his name. And we also heard from a number of individuals within President Biden's cabinet, Ms. Rice. And so they offered several accounts of what's going on across the nation. And of course, first and foremost, they were most concerned about one, our economy, but two, Ukraine and the situation that's playing out with those citizens there. And so our heart and prayers are with them as they continue to get through the war that they are currently in. But without further ado, I want to give Alderwoman Alicia Miller Blakely an opportunity to chime in and let us know some of the highlights she had by way of a takeaway. And I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge some of the off-campus visits we were able to make on behalf of the city with regard to our connecting with our congressman and our senator. Alderwoman Blakely.
Hi, everybody. How's everybody? Alderwoman Gibson Carter, thank you so much for the opportunity to come on your show. A lot of times you come on my show, but it's not that often that I actually do come on yours. One of the main things that I took away from the visit in DC was the fact that we had the opportunity to actually meet with our Senate representatives staff in reference to Yamacraw Village and the Weeping Time properties. We do a lot of talking here locally, but to get other ears on what it is that we're speaking about in reference to these historical properties, it's a blessing. It's a real blessing. It makes a lot of sense for others in our nation to know about what's going on. I know you all had an opportunity to go to the African American Museum. And I know you're going to talk further about your experience there, but it's a really sad situation that we have integral properties in our city that played a very, very strong historical piece in the makeup of this country as a whole. So that was the most intricate thing that I took from being in Washington. Now, I did attend classes there, how to serve in a disruptive situation, and also bringing uh, uh, retail to our city. And I had a conversation with our city manager today where he asked me where would I see retail being beneficial in the city. And, we look at downtown Savannah, and downtown Savannah has a lot of shops and entertainment places for tourists, for everybody. Uh, but it's not so welcoming to the African American community. So that particular class that I went to, dealing with retail and businesses and what have you, I suggested to him that we have a entertainment district for the African American population here in the city of Savannah. And that was pretty much what I gathered from uh, DC. As you all know, those that watch my page as well, I had a situation where I had to wind up going to the emergency room because, in DC, they say one block compared to city of Savannah is equivalent to 3 blocks in the city of Savannah. So when we first got there, we walked about, I would say, 9 blocks to get to our destination and then walk back. And we saw 3 seasons in one day. And I felt it in that Monday coming. So I had to wind up in the emergency room, and I didn't get an opportunity to do a lot of the activities that was taking place. But I can say this, Leo, that is the league. What's that acronym stand for? Alderwoman Gibson Carter. I don't have it in front of me.
You're talking about
Leo.
the organization for
Yes, the Black Caucus.
Mm-hmm.
Black elected officials. Yes, that was one of the most powerful events that I went to, and reason being, it's a diverse organization where they have people from all over come together and talk about issues that affect people of color. They spoke a lot about diversity with our Hispanic community, our Asian community, our African American community, and all of us coming together, the LGBTQ and what have you. So, that was really, really interesting, talking to these people one-on-one, finding out what it is that they're doing in their cities, in their communities to enhance, the quality of life. So, that was a very interesting reception that I had the opportunity to attend as well.
And another breakout they had was what they call women in municipal
Yes.
government. And during that presentation was a young woman who talked a lot about the culture of care. And that culture of care essentially represents babies to elders. And talked about the city's responsibility in engaging in policy initiatives to assure that individuals, infants to their ripe old age, have access to things like transportation and childcare, and how making sure we have adequate infrastructure plays a primary role. But the biggest takeaway in that was most relevant to what we just came out of, and that's this whole talk about the hotel motel tax. And so when it comes to a culture of care, they spoke specifically about a quality tourism industry for those cities that have tourism products. And so I looked at this as a missed opportunity. And for me, more than learning when I go to these conferences, I look at a lot of what we're not doing here in Savannah. I'm able to
Mm-hmm.
identify a lot of missed opportunities or opportunities that we're not taking advantage of. And one of those are connecting with our tourism industry. She prefaced Austin, Texas, as having a best practice model when it comes to their provision of programs like childcare through their community block grants program, as well as aid to elder care. And it's on the table with $65 million. An additional
Mm-hmm.
$65 million we were looking at coming back into our tourism industry. But as a sitting older person, I could not, in my good conscience, support the increase of a tax on our hospitality industry if it was not going to also, in tandem, benefit those whose backs the tourism industry is carried and built upon. And so, if we are paying hotel workers who clean toilets and make beds under $13 an hour, and they have to leave those places of work to go to another job to afford market rent in Savannah, we are contributing to the deficiency that exists in our community where elements like crime and some of our most
Mm-hmm.
pressing societal and social ills are concerned. And so, making these connections and making them stick is something that I really want to look to. We also attended the public safety session, and we know
Yes.
that crime is a crisis across the United States, from police attrition and to this whole notion of defunding the police to issues related to Black and Brown communities where community policing is concerned. These were some of the talks that we've had. In addition, we know that gun violence is rampant across the nation, but
Mm-hmm.
I subscribe to the fact that we can control what we have going on here in Savannah. We can do a better job of controlling the criminal element because our bearing capacity and the resources are great here. Right now, what I want our citizens to wrap their heads around are these ARPA dollars that are coming to the communities across the nation, including our city and
Yes.
including our county. Our Board of Education is a recipient of $95 million in ARPA funds. That's the relief funds through the CARES Act. We also have an additional 60 million for the city of Savannah. And I think Chatham County
Mm-hmm.
is in position to receive $55 million. And so we're talking over $200 million to this county between the Board of Education,
Yes.
Chatham County, and the city of Savannah. With that type of resource over the next 2 years, there should be no lack and no want among any demographic in this community. And what we want you all to do is to position yourselves so that you are holding these entities accountable for expending and allocating those resources in a meaningful, rightful way. Take, for example, just at our last meeting, we had a great discovery. Our city manager was seeking approval to amend a $1.2 million grant via relief funds that we had no idea we had sitting in the bank. So these were funds that were
Wow.
actually sitting in the bank at the height of the pandemic. And during our budget process, no one ever mentioned this. But when I raised my hand when we first came on council and said forensics audit, everybody just went haywire. And so when the money is funny, you have to keep your eye on the ball. You have to keep tracking it.
Yes.
And that's what we are here to do. Not only are we here to assure accountability and to assure that communities are represented, we are also here to be a keeper of the watch. And in doing so, sometimes as those pieces roll out, it doesn't always sound good. We were also a part of the homelessness panel. And again, what's happening here in Savannah is reminiscent of what's happening across the nation. Nonetheless, we have the bearing capacity and we have the resources to do better in Savannah. We can become
Mm-hmm.
a model. We can become a standard. And Alderwoman Blakely, you had more information in terms of uh, federal rules or federal policies that would
Yes.
allow and would
Yes. As a matter of fact, I don't know what's going on. You're kind of breaking up a little bit. You're going in and out, but hopefully they can hear me. I was shocked when we got to Washington D.C. to see that individuals actually set up tents on federal property, and we were asking questions, how is that possible? And there's actually a law that says that there's nothing that can be done to these individuals setting up on federal property, because this is what they pay for as well. So here in Savannah, when you see individuals panhandling or just laying around, they automatically know that there's really not a lot that we can do in terms of getting them off of the mediums and what have you. But there are certain things that we can put in place to make sure that their safety is what we want to make sure, that they don't hurt themselves or hurt someone else. We can put in ordinances or policies in place, and hopefully we'll be able to do something like that. And I also want to reiterate what you said about the hotel motel tax. You said it in a really nice way, but I'm going to say it this kind of way right here. First and foremost, the reason why, and y'all will probably hear other people talk about how we left $65 million on the table. Yes, we did. And the reason we did is because we only asked for 7.5 million of 65 million to be given to individuals who work in our hotel motel industry, so that they could have adequate housing, they could have childcare, they could have health care, they could have things that would benefit them, so that they wouldn't have to work 2 and 3 jobs at a time, leaving their children unsupervised. Well, the same as the last time when it went before the General Assembly, it was stated that they didn't want to give us that funding. They didn't want to donate out of $65 million, 7.5 million to the lost, the least, and the left out. So just know that when you see us on the dais and we're asking questions and we are raising awareness, it is for a reason. We're not just out here just staying in good trouble for no reason. It's a reason why we are asking the questions that we are asking and saying the things that we are saying.
Well, and to that point, with regard to the hotel motel tax, while many would hold us accountable or say that we are the blame, I want to remind people we're not in the majority. We're not in the majority. Rarely are we getting those things that we're advocating for. So it wasn't just the minority on council, and by minority, I don't mean as a woman or an African American, but minority
Mm-hmm.
by way of the vote. There's now a 6-3 split on our council. And so
Yes.
with on major issues, most of the issues that keep the lights on in the city and keep the water running and the bills paid, of course, we all vote in unison on those things. So don't
Mm-hmm.
get that mistaken for these larger issues when it comes to legacy contracting, when it comes
Mm-hmm.
encroachment upon people's neighborhoods, like the Olympus neighborhood, like the West Chatham community, like the Weeping
The
Property,
Highlands.
the Highlands. When it comes to
Mm-hmm.
those, that's when you're going to see that 6-3 split. That's where the rubber is going to meet the road. That's where you will see more of the evidence of who is actually voting with the voice of the people. And so
Mm-hmm.
we also want you to be mindful of those voting records that are consistent with the donor dollars to these individuals' campaigns as well. And so when it
Definitely.
comes to, we want to go back to homelessness. And the session that I was in was on homelessness intervention and prevention. And they spoke specifically about how mental health and the lack thereof plays a pervasive role in how well communities do and how more homelessness occur in those communities where there's not a lot of mental health support. Now we know here in Georgia, we lag far behind when it comes to mental health outreach to the citizens across the state. And we're hoping that that will soon change. There right now are dollars available to states within the United States to get relief,
Lots.
but Georgia is not on the list because our governor did not accept those proceeds. And so, what we want you to know is that despite that, there is a national effort through our suicide hotline. They are now looking at expanding the suicide hotline to encompass outreach for all mental health needs and all mental health issues.
Mm-hmm.
And so that new hotline has been changed to a 3-digit number, and that number is 988.
Mm-hmm.
Individuals, just like you can call our United Way at 211 or our City of Savannah at 311 for support and help. Individuals who are experiencing a mental health crisis or have a loved one or a friend who's experiencing a mental health crisis, uh, beginning in June, they will launch
Mm-hmm.
a suicide mental health hotline, and individuals will be able to access support by calling 988. One of the other things we talked about when we met with our senator was a litany of issues related to post traumatic stress. In addition to the crime and the gun violence that's running rampant in our community, we regret that there is no sense of urgency where this issue is concerned. African American men and boys are falling like flies on the streets of Savannah. There have been more African American men and boys killed in this city on the watch of a majority African American council
Mm-hmm.
more than in the history of any other administration in the history of Savannah. Our police are working from a deficit. We have little to no racial diversity on our force, and we have no support for police officers when it comes to PTSD. And so we have none for the communities where most of these crimes are occurring. Most of the mass shootings that we have experienced and see happening in Savannah, a lot you don't even hear about because now the media is providing cover for the crime as opposed to coverage of the crimes. And so, with that, we are not seeing how our communities where these shootings are occurring. Just last night on Watts Drive, an individual riddled over 30 bullets in a home and at random
Yes.
parks. That's not just
Yeah.
situational violence. That's not just situational violence. When you have a person with a high powered gun shooting, that becomes a public health issue
Yes,
because bullets do
definitely.
not have names. And so, what we asked our senator to look into is making sure that our housing authority is providing for the appropriate outreach post episodes. Can you imagine the children who are living in those housing developments, sleeping at night? They wake up the next morning and are expected to go to school and perform and to behave after coming out of that trauma.
You know what, Alderwoman Carter, I have to say this in reference to our public housing here in the city, our public housing communities. We all know that Savannah is a cash cow for certain industries, okay? Um, and I'm speaking
Support
specifically to
tourism,
Yamacraw, yes, Yamacraw, Caton Fraser Homes. Um, when you look at those particular housing communities, I'm not going to call them projects, I'm going to call them communities because you have people in those areas that, you know, love each other, even though you see a lot of the violence and you know, impoverishedness and what have you. You have people that actually genuinely love each other and love those communities. And when you look at what's happening here in Savannah, where they're trying to eliminate those communities so that they can put businesses there, they could put hotels there, they could put things there that's going to benefit a certain group of people, as opposed to helping those particular communities. So the beautiful thing about being in Washington, D.C. is that we found out that there are laws and processes that they have to go through in order to do the things that they want to do with those particular communities. Now, a lot of things has happened in the past, but they have never, our current housing authority has never been called to the carpet or held to task as to what it is that they were doing, if it was legal or illegal. But
And
I
we
just
have
want to say
issues.
this. I,
We have issues ranging from the inability for individuals to get access to vouchers,
mm-hmm,
use their Section 8 vouchers. We have the issues related to Stillwell and the conditions of Stillwell, no working elements,
mm-hmm,
mold. I got pictures of a elderly woman who had a bed bug breakout and she's been forced
yes.
out. And then we have this issue related to forced displacement of these historical properties.
Mm-hmm. But I just want to let them know, first and foremost, those particular Caton Frazier and Stillwell and Yamacraw, they have been slated to be demolished, to be getting rid of. So if that is the case, then what's going to happen to those particular people? And I know a lot of people say, well, you hard on housing authority. Yes, I am hard on housing authority, and I have a reason to be. When you have when you're doing certain things that's going to be the detriment to certain groups of people because you think that they don't have a voice, or you could just do whatever you want to do. That is why we are here. That is why we are in the positions that we're in. And to go to Washington, D.C. and find out that we can now put things in place through the legal system to make them have some semblance of caring. That was one thing that I got from going to Washington. And I truly appreciate the time that we spent with the legislators there and them educating us. So I'm just going to say this: housing authority, and for those that's listening, you're not going to be able to just take Yamacraw and get rid of it the way that you want to. You're not going to be able to just sell off the Weeping Time property to the Salvation Army. Caton Frazier, no, you're going to have to do what is right legally before you can just go in and say, okay, we're going to give y'all a piece of paper and we telling you what we're going to do. No, you're going to have to engage the community. You're going to have to engage the nonprofits in those particular areas before you can just decide that you're going to take Yamacraw, you're going to take the flyover, you're going to demolish groups of communities where people, the lost, the least, and the left out are. Okay, I just wanted to let people know we
And you know what, Alderwoman Lexington, we would be
mm,
remiss if we did not mention the advocates who joined us in Washington on their own dime.
yes.
And these were, and we were there on taxpayer dollars, and that's why we
Mm-hmm.
are being accountable to you tonight. I wish I had mornings where I could have slept late. I wish I could have skipped out and went shopping. But no, we rubbed shoulders and we rubbed our heads against those walls, and we were able to collect the necessary contacts that we needed to make
Yes.
sure that we are moving through these pieces as best as we can. And, you know, just getting that validation. If you go back and you watch my show from last week, you will see
Mm-hmm.
I was in the lobby and I pulled aside some of my council colleagues from around the nation
Mm-hmm.
to say, what is your experience in your community? How many people does it take to get an item on the agenda? How many people does it take to introduce legislation for consideration? And you know what? It's nothing like what we are experiencing here in Savannah. Nothing. What's happening here in Savannah with our council, the leadership here, where we have essentially been subjected to what I consider voter suppression. Because if you,
Mm-hmm.
as a citizen, pitch to me a policy initiative or an idea you would like to have considered for resolution, for ordinance, or something that would be passed and that ultimately becomes law for Savannah, I can't do it. I can't do it because
Well,
not
I'm gonna say it like this, Alderwoman Carter. You can't do it. I can't do it. And Alderwoman Lanier can't do it. But we found a way to
yes,
do it. You know, aside from going through the processes that we voted for, well, that some voted for with our council rules. So just know that we are still, irregardless to what they put on paper and irregardless to what the policy is, we're still making things happen
right.
for our communities.
And that's so true. Despite uh, that rule, we have been able to make some strides. But if that rule were not in place, you must know that being in office in excess of 2 years, we would have and could have done more because we came in as a very progressive and aggressive council, seeking to do what you sent us to do. In
Exactly.
2019, the electorate sent a strong indictment and mandate to those who were going in: no more business as usual and no more politics as usual, no more establishment business. We were supposed to be investing more in people and less in brick and mortar. And in short
Mm-hmm.
order, it seems as if the baton from the previous administration was taken and they are running with it. And we're just trying
Exactly.
to run next to them to stop as much as we can. And so, with that, I want to go back to the homelessness piece just to say in the homelessness prevention and intervention session, we talked more about mental health and the need for it. But consistent to what you were saying, Alderwoman Blakely, in the halls, the corridors, and in the sessions, you just could feel the one common theme among all of the attendees as well as the presenters was compassion.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed, whether or not it lip service or people were putting their best faces on, but it was compassion. And that was the presentation mandate from this particular session presenters, is that we approach tackling our homelessness issue in our communities with compassion, recognizing that these are individuals who are in trauma. And as a result of the conditions they are subjected to, oftentimes their mental health and physical health conditions become exasperated. In addition, one of the things that I hadn't thought of, they encouraged us to track and to check to see how many people are actually dying as a
Dying.
result of
Yes.
being homeless. And they basically stated that those numbers are rising across the nation. In addition, the fastest growing demographic of the homeless population are elderly women.
Mm-hmm.
That was another eye opener for us. And so they basically just encouraged us to meet our homeless population where they are, engage humanely, and create opportunities where we're thinking outside of the box, like utilizing some of our unused retail space to provide support to them. So lots of
Yes.
ideas, lots of things that I'm going to put together and present to our city manager. And they also encouraged us to engage more with landlords so that we're engaging in work that prevents family and the working class homeless as well. Alderwoman Blakely, you were going to say something?
Yes. You know, we put a lot of emphasis on our homeless population because it is growing. And you know, I'm actually now seeing Alderwoman Carter, people who I knew growing up. I told you about an experience that I had about
That
2 weeks ago, where a young man who I went to church with, I walked into the store and he asked me if I would buy him a fountain drink, a Mr. Pibb fountain drink. And I said, yeah, hold on, let me get my gas or whatever. And when I went to get the gas, I looked at him and I realized who he was. But the young lady who was behind the counter, she was like, don't give him anything. Don't do this. Don't do that. And I told her, I said, baby, that's not me. I'm going to help this young man because I know him personally, and I just think that we as a people need to have more compassion for our homeless population. We need to have more compassion for our lost, least, and left out. I saw where the numbers where they utilized Fraser Homes, Caton Homes, and Blackshear
Right.
to actually build the Eastern Wharf.
To
And the
validate.
Eastern Wharf is an area where it's a tax allocated district
Right.
where all of the money, all of the taxes that's generated in that area stays in that area. And I look at that and I'm like, you got to just not have a heart to
Hmm.
the individuals that did this. They just don't care, because if the Alderwoman Lanier always talks about a community benefits agreement with our homeless population. When they built that Eastern Wharf, they should have had something in place
Yes.
that
Yes.
would have benefited those people
Exactly.
that live under the bridge, even
Because
if it
guess
was
what?
just a huh.
Because guess why? They were there before the Eastern Wharf.
Exactly,
And
exactly. And even if it was just a building where individuals could go and take a shower, wash their clothes, or uh, just some a clinic or something to assist them, because that particular project, that particular community, the Eastern Wharf with the tax allocation, they they have a whole lot. They
hmm
have an abundance over there, and to give those people, even if they wanted to put something like that under the bridge, you know what I'm saying, or across on the Tybee Depot, we got to do better as a community. We have got to do better as a community. And I'm so thankful that we did go to DC, because we found out that there's lots of resources, lots of funding that you can come down through the federal government to help us with those types of projects, so
and where else are you hearing this, people? Who else is talking about this? And here's what I say to folks. I go on my little spin. One thing for certain and two things for sure. People have never been as engaged in local government
not at all.
as they are now. You know when our meetings are, you know what an agenda is,
Mm-hmm.
you know the difference between the workshop and the actual meeting. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know more about who your district alderpersons are. You know what the at large alderpersons mean. Uh, you now know that every citizen of Savannah has four representatives. You know what our budget is for the city of Savannah. For this fiscal year, it's $479 million.
Mm-hmm.
There has never been a time where sitting council people brings government to the people.
Exactly.
We are dialing this down and framing it in a narrative where people feel like they actually own the government. And that's
Mm-hmm.
our goal. Our goal is to empower you to take your rightful place. You don't ask us for what you want, you don't tell us, and you don't beg us. I'm sorry, you don't ask us and you don't beg us. You tell us
Mm-hmm.
what it is that you want.
Exactly.
And then we
Yes.
want to inspire you to hold us accountable. And
Mm-hmm.
so the level of engagement has never been what it is today. And for that, I am very, very proud. Whether you
Yes.
agree or disagree, and whether you come to the table for the sensationalism, because if you come and you say that you heard something on the news or you read something in the paper, undoubtedly it's not the right assessment of what really happened. We encourage
Exactly.
you to tune in and listen to the message behind the message that plays out on television. Alderwoman
Mm-hmm.
Blakely, I also had an opportunity to sit into a federal media advisory session. And in
Yes.
that session, again, more than what I'm learning, I also see missed opportunities where our media is concerned. And I see
Yes.
the media here in Savannah is really, really messy. And so, what we want you as the citizens of Savannah to do, when you start seeing the differences and how the reporting is versus what actually happened, we want you to call your media outlets and hold them accountable. We want you to call their advertisers and say to those who advertise with Savannah Morning News, with TLC, SAV, and JCL, if you don't get it right, if you continue with the sensationalism, if you continue to make one demographic of this city look bad, if you continue
Mm-hmm.
to hammer down on the most vocal advocates on commission and on council, and you hold up those who are most marginalized, we will hold you accountable. We will turn
Mm-hmm.
you off. We will call the advertisers and tell them that we don't care for that report. And so
Exactly.
that's the type of mobilization that will help us gain back ownership of our community and assure that the young people who are watching will grow up and recognize that these entities have a greater responsibility, because when the media does not behave in a manner in which is conducive for a harmonious community, what happens
Mm-hmm.
is you see scenarios where they contribute to the public health issue. When
Exactly.
you are covering crime and not providing coverage of the crime, you are essentially detracting away from the fact that this really is a public health issue. When you
Mm-hmm.
are more inclined to report on the sensationalism of interpersonal relations on council versus inappropriate spending,
Mm-hmm.
if it's more important to report on perceived name calling, but you won't report on inappropriate spending of the mayor's office where you spent $83,000 without permission to renovate your office, where we are down more than 100 officers, but we add one who's assigned to the mayor to fix his breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and he's getting paid
Yes.
almost $70,000. When you are not inclined enough, media, to be more interested in the fact that the mayor gets an extra stipend in addition to his salary and his car allowance, and you're not supposed to get a car allowance if you actually are using the city vehicle, but you
Mm-hmm.
use the city vehicle, you get the car allowance, you have your own car, but you also get this other mysterious extra $500 a month that nobody knew about.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Hmm.
but it's not important to report on
Inquiring
that.
minds found out.
It's not important to report on that. It's more important to report an alleged name calling episode. It's more important to report on the sensationalism that goes on council that's minutia in the grand scheme of what really happens under that gold dome.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can go on and on about that, but we want you to know that we also engaged in a after school policy network where we
Yeah.
learned that not only are after school programs restricted to our school districts, but the importance of our localities partnering with our school districts via utilization of our community centers, which is a big stick for you, Alderwoman Blakely. And speaking
Yes.
of summer programming, we wanted you to know that Alderwoman Blakely and I advocated from day one for a after school summer program. I'm sorry, for
Yes.
a summer work program for our youth. And that's an example of one of those things that didn't get to see the light of day, but we are still pressing our way.
Yes.
Mindfulness, some people would think that mindfulness is something that doesn't really matter. Why did you attend a session on mindfulness? Because I needed to de-stress and breathe and learn techniques.
Yes.
But most important, I was excited to know that mindfulness is a program that is being rapidly adopted by cities for their employees.
Yes.
How awesome is that? And what city needs mindfulness more than the city of Savannah, who has had 4 or 5 bosses in less than 10 years? I've only been in office for 2 years, and I'm on my fourth city manager. Oh my God.
Yes, that's just whew,
Breathe.
that's just it's sad. It's really sad. But you know what, Alderwoman Carter, I want to talk about briefly the meeting that we had with our arena uh personnel and our CDC. We had that today. And for those that's on the west side of Savannah, you all please get involved, get engaged in what's happening. That particular CDC is seeking a community benefits agreement so that that area, those communities, those neighborhoods will be able to engage in the economic driver that was supposed to be for those communities, as opposed to individuals coming into that community and telling people what it is that live there, what they need. You know, I often say, you can't come in my house and tell me how to run my house. You've never slept in my house. You don't know the people in my house, but you're going to still come in and try and tell me how I'm supposed to live. That's not going to happen. And I'm so thankful to the CEO, which is Deidre Grimm, who actually, you know, orchestrated that meeting along with the first district alderwoman, you know, to just get those people in that area, in the community as a whole, to get engaged and get involved
Well,
with
you know,
that particular economic driver.
I would like to encourage the first district to do what the fifth district is doing. Those
Yes,
neighborhood presidents came together, and they do not always agree on the same issues, but they stay in the room. They stay in
yes,
the room, and they make sure that they have a collective voice on the big issues that matter most. And right now, the biggest issue in the fifth district is the fairground. The biggest issue in the
yes,
first district is the arena and the threat of gentrification as well as forced displacement and those economic drivers that were promised that are now being threatened. And so we want to make everyone know who's a part of the first district leadership that we are at the table and we are in position to continue to advocate
yes.
for all of those promises that were made. But you know, Alderwoman Blakely, I don't know if you know this or not, but that was my first time visiting the arena.
Yes, I know. I know you were adamant about not being in there based on the way things have happened. And, you know, I totally agree with you. Um, you know, there
I
were just
haven't been to
a lot of
I
questions
I
that needed to be
cannot get
answered.
past the fact that $19 million, almost $20 million, is invested in grass and dirt.
Yeah, I know.
But
Yes, yes.
when I turn into the corridor to head to the arena, I have to dodge I don't know how many potholes. I look at the landscape. I recall the number of calls about flooding. I look at the infrastructure that's damaged
Mm-hmm.
and I get to this building, the largest, most expensive project in the history of construction in Savannah, 165 million.
Yes,
And then I walk through the doors, and it is no way.
exactly.
I'm not a construction person, but I'm not a dummy. There
Okay.
is no way in the world, just like that little building over there is it Moses Jackson with the gym?
Yes, yes, yes.
When I say for leasing of Savannah, between the arena and the gym at Moses Jackson, Savannah has been fleeced because there's no way that arena, from what I could see, is $165 million, and you got 20 million. We've been paying over $500,000 over the last year and to date this year
Yes.
for parking that we're not even using
Not even.
because it's not ready. Yeah, we paid
It's
five hundred
it's
thousand dollars
it's
last year for
it's
parking.
interesting, and people need to know. People need to know. Um, you know,
And how
a
many
lot of
millionaires
times
did we
we
make
can't
from?
get, huh?
no millionaires were made from that project. No minority
Yeah.
millionaires.
No minority millionaires. Let's be clear. In the words of Nikki White, let's be clear. No minority millionaires
Mhm.
were created from that project, but you got some folks that made some money. And I
Yes.
mean, let's just put it out there. Uh, uh, I just look at it and it hurts my heart. It hurts my heart, especially when our DBEs were promised that they were going to get a piece of that pie. And then when it all boils down, they were just using those individuals
To
as
earn the
poster
contract,
boys,
to get the
just
contract, and then once they got it,
lying
they
and
took
letting
the
people
grip on
think that they were
them.
getting it when they weren't
Right.
getting anything.
Right. And we have seen that theme throughout various projects, but for this one to be the largest project in the history of Savannah that
Yes.
have essentially changed the lives of business owners in our community is
Mm-hmm.
sad. And we see how the airport in Atlanta, as large as that project was, we see how when it was put together, there were intentional economic drivers that were
Yes.
uh, put out there for individuals. And right now, to this day, Atlanta boasts of making the most African American millionaires and minority millionaires
Yes.
from that after from that
But you know
area.
what, Alderwoman Carter? That's because they had a progressive, conscious thinking mayor. Maynard Jackson said, before anything else happens on this project, if we do not engage our minority businesses, then we won't do anything. And we won't finish this project. So what he did was he found something that our DBEs, our minority businesses could do. And that was they laid the foundation for that airport. They laid the concrete, the runways. We didn't even do that here in the city.
Hmm.
We didn't do anything in the
Hmm.
city to create
Wealth.
millionaires, to create thousandaires.
Hmm.
In my opinion, we had a young
This.
man who was trying to deliver. He had a trucking business who was trying to deliver the elevators and what have you, and they did everything in their power to stop this young man. But I'm thankful that he pressed on, and he actually still sent the invoice for what they had promised him that he was going to get. And he didn't do the work, but he sure got paid.
And that
And
was
that's
to
a
your
yeah, I
credit.
said it moment.
That was to your credit, because if you were not
Yes,
at the table, his voice would have never been heard. And so,
exactly.
again, and as much as people are saying we're not doing, there's a lot that we're blocking and there's a lot that we're stopping. But we
Yes,
are continuously grateful for those things that we are and have been able to accomplish, like getting that direct fiscal support for our Little League recreational
yes.
center, making
Shouts out
sure
to
that
you.
making
Yes,
sure that our local charities got 100% of everything they applied for through our CDBG and ESG dollars. And so
yes,
we are staying the course. There were so many other sessions that we attended, Alderwoman Blakely, from the national conference. But we want you to know that we came back with some wonderful ideas and some wonderful thoughts for programs and activities, and you'll see some of that rolling out pretty soon. In addition, we will continuously try to encourage our city manager to get on board where a lot of these initiatives are concerned. And so, as we go forth, recognize that we are here advocating for you. I don't see what I'm doing more of a fight than I do just advocating.
yes,
Advocating and working on behalf of the people. And so, with that, we want to say thanks to our sanitation department for a
yes,
job they did
yes,
in cleaning up after St. Patrick's Day. Again, congratulations to our Irish community for a wonderful St. Patrick's Day weekend. We had awesome weather. Up until the last day, of course, but we're happy to be able to start seeing the light of day. And as we
hmm,
move through these pieces, now that we have survived the pandemic and we're still sort of in and out of it, we want you to know that all the pandemic did was expose pre-existing vulnerabilities that were there all the while. And so
yes,
now that that is um, the known fact, we want you to know that we're continuously working to make sure that the most underserved in this community get served. Because as I always say, when the least of us are helped, what do you think is going to help and happen to the best of us?
That's right.
So, and finally, weeping time. Nothing is more pressing to me than crime and the weeping time. And so,
That's
where
right.
crime is concerned, we're not doing enough. We have been, I want full disclosure, we have asked several times that we go into executive session so that we can discuss this issue related
Yes.
to uh, our crime situation. Ultimately, that ties into a personnel problem. And so we have not been listened to. We have not, our request for an executive session has not been honored. And I don't know how responsible that is for a council to do business 2 times a month. We don't spend money once a month. We spend millions of dollars twice a month. Every 2 weeks, we spend
Yes.
a whole bunch of money here in the city of Savannah. And how is it that we're settling cases in and out of court? We're not connecting with our attorney one on one. It's just really, really irresponsible right now. And so those are
Well,
going to be
well, you know what, Alderwoman Carter? Let me say this right here. We're dealing with that now, but you said something that was so very important and so phenomenal when you said you're not worrying about the chair because you're going to be the mayor. And that is so true. You know, and I thank God that you actually decided to run for our mayor because, and this is for your viewing and listening audience, if you want someone in that mayoral seat that surely, surely cares about the people in this city, then you will vote for Alderwoman Kesha Gibson Carter to be the mayor.
and you know,
And that's another yeah, I said it moment.
I really appreciate that, Alderwoman Blakely.
Yes.
I want to thank you for extending your platform for me to
Oh,
make
yeah.
my platform clear for my bid. But do know, people, I came to City Hall with a team that I thought was going to be the best that Savannah has ever seen. And
Yes.
as I have been patient and trying to work through these pieces related to interpersonal situations that shouldn't even factor into when it comes to helping people and making a difference, um, I don't want to struggle anymore. I
Mm-mm.
can't see myself serving in this seat again under this leader, Van Johnson. It's just not going to happen. And so, what we are going to do is we're going to take this top seat, we're going to take the top job, and we're going to
Yes.
show you how it's done. And I can't do it without you, Alderwoman Blakely. So, take care of yourself, get
Oh,
better,
I'm gonna be
get well,
there. I'm gonna be there. I'm not going anywhere.
get better, get well. But what we want to
Yes.
close out and acknowledge that it will be KGC in 2023, and you'll hear
Yes.
more about my campaign. You'll hear more about my campaign as we get through these next couple of months. But in the interim, Alderwoman Blakely, by your side as my post two, in this seat of post one, I'm going to continue to do what the citizens of Savannah sent me to do in 2019,
Yes.
and that was to be your advocate, and that I will challenge the status quo and advocate for all of those things related to what's reasonable for our tax-paying citizens, your roads, your sewage, your taxes. And again, that's another thing. We were only the three of us, me, you, and other woman, Lanier, voted to roll the taxes back so that you would not be experiencing that tax increase that you are experiencing
Exactly.
right now. But by April 1st, for those of
Exactly.
you from medical exemptions to age exemptions, you only have until April 1st to
Yes.
file for those exemptions. So get down to your tax assessor's office and call Sonia Jackson, our tax
Mm-hmm.
commissioner, and she can help you out there. Weeping time, finally in DC. On our last day, I had an opportunity to visit for the first time. I've never gone. The African American Museum there. Fascinating, fascinating. It definitely does take at least 3 days to get through it. And it does physically, you can do it in like 2 hours if you just like go through. But to really slow down, take it in, read all of what's there, and to contemplate. It could take at least 3 to 4 days, but
Yes.
most moving for me. And I shared this with the residents at the Tatumville Neighborhood Association. I want to encourage each of you who are citizens of Savannah and live in neighborhoods where there are neighborhood associations to join your neighborhood association.
Yes.
Get involved in your community, because I'm telling you, Savannah is changing. She's changing fast. And in 2 to 5 years, if something doesn't change with our leadership, Savannah, as we know her today, will not be our culturally blended community anymore. And so that's
Not at
what has
all.
to change. But there in D.C., in the nation's capital, there was a tribute, an exhibit of the Weeping Time.
Yes.
The names of the women, the men, the children who were sold into slavery this month in 1859 was there in D.C. And I said, in our nation's capital, in the African American Museum, there we have a memorial of sorts.
Yes.
In D.C. And right here in Savannah, Georgia, where it actually happened, over on Augusta Avenue, less than 7 miles from my house.
Yes.
We don't honor her at all. There is nothing.
Something is wrong.
From crime to the weeping time, something is wrong. Savannah, I love you, and good night.
Yes. I'm back. I'm actually sitting in my car, so it's real dark. It's like I have a silhouette, a black, what they call it, a black black background. I know it's like the green screen, a black screen around me, but I'm actually in my car.
It's nice. Well, I just closed out the show, so we're good. We're good.
Oh, okay. Good to go. Good to go.
I love you, Savannah. Alderwoman Blakely, thank you for coming on the show tonight.
Oh, you are so welcome. Thank you for having me.
We have a city council meeting this Thursday. Tune in and hear and listen for yourself. Oftentimes, our meetings are 2 to 3 hours or more long, and I know it's a lot to take in, but if you're like me and you don't sleep well at night, pull out your phone, pull it up on Facebook, go to our City of Savannah website. They are cataloged there and archived, and you can pull up meetings from 10 years ago to 2 weeks ago. So engage, get involved. Our numbers are also on that website. If there's anything you want to know, any clarity, call us. We want to make sure that you know we are accessible to you. So with that, again, y'all are getting a lot of love tonight. I love you. Good night.
Good night.
I like that.